Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. Have you ever wondered if the headlines truly capture the full story of global power struggles, especially when the dynamic between two strong, often unpredictable leaders comes into focus? We're talking about the evolving relationship between Narendra Modi and Donald Trump, a partnership The Economist recently depicted as a dramatic unraveling, going so far as to call their past rapport a bromance turned sour.
Today, we're going to unpack the Economist narrative. They focus heavily on tariffs, India's growing reliance on Russian crude, and Delhi's firm refusal to be lectured, suggesting these factors are causing bilateral trust to simply evaporate. But as we explore, we'll go beyond that initial framing. We'll bring in additional data, maybe challenge some of those core assumptions, and flag areas where the picture is far more nuanced than it might first appear. Our mission is really to give you a clearer, more complete understanding of what's truly at play in this complex relationship.
Okay, so let's start by setting the stage with The Economist's central argument. They paint a picture of a significant shift, right? From those stadium-filling, almost chummy appearances during Trump's first term to what now looks like an escalating dispute. What are the core points they highlight that we can truly stand behind based on the evidence?
Well, The Economist certainly hits on some undeniable facts. For instance, Trump has indeed been quite public with his threats. He's warned of very substantially higher duties.
Beyond the current 25% tariffs.
Exactly. If India continues purchasing Russian oil. And this wasn't just a fleeting comment. It was echoed on a Reuters live blog recently. And he even stated it himself on Truth Social. It underscores the seriousness of his public stance.
And the Russian oil angle seems absolutely critical here. It feels like the central flashpoint of this current tension, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
How significant is India's reliance on it right now?
It's massive. Russia currently supplies roughly a third of India's crude. If you look at government sources, January to June imports alone were around 1.75 million barrels per day.
Wow, 1.75 million.
Yeah. To put that in perspective, that's approximately 35% of India's total crude, which aligns remarkably closely with The Economist's own figure of 35–40%.
Okay.
So the sheer scale of India's dependence on discounted Russian oil is, well, simply undeniable.
That's a huge volume. But for all this saber rattling around tariffs, what's the actual economic impact on India looking like? Is this a devastating blow, or is it more of a strategic pressure point that Delhi can, absorb?
Right. The key insight here is that despite the headlines, the macro hit appears surprisingly modest.
Really? Modest?
Yeah, at least according to current assessments from financial institutions like the Bank of Baroda. They estimate a mere 0.2 percentage point reduction in India's FY26 growth.
Just 0.2 points.
What this means for you is that India's economy would still expand around a very robust 6.5%. So the immediate economic fallout might not be as severe as some might assume.
Right. Gives Delhi considerable room to maneuver then. And how has India responded to these pressures? The Economist suggests a posture of defiance, a clear refusal to simply be dictated to. Does that hold up?
It absolutely does. Indian diplomacy has been signaling strong resolve at every turn. Prime Minister Modi's public address on August 2nd, for instance.
Ah, yes, I remember that.
He powerfully urged economic self-reliance. Now, he didn't explicitly name the U.S., but the message towards external pressures was pretty clear.
Understood.
And beyond rhetoric, senior Indian envoys are actively being dispatched to Moscow. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval was in Moscow just on August 5th.
To discuss energy and defense, right?
Correct. Critical ties. And Foreign Minister Subramanyam Jaishankar is reportedly set to follow later this month. These actions definitively underscore India's firm stance, its unwillingness to be simply lectured.
Okay. This is where the narrative truly expands beyond The Economist's initial framing. While they capture some undeniable truths, what crucial underlying drivers or hidden complexities might they be overlooking? What's not immediately obvious from their focus?
Well, one significant factor, I think, is that these tariffs seem to be as much about U.S. election optics as they are genuinely about Russia or trade imbalances.
Ah, the politics angle.
Exactly. Trump frequently cites a $46 billion trade gap with India in his rally speeches. It's a number that sounds impactful, right?
Sure does.
However, if we dig deeper, almost 45% of that deficit actually originates from U.S. multinationals. Think Apple, Abbott, Micron.
Shipping from their own plants in India.
Precisely. Shipping products like iPhones and pharma inputs from their own Indian plants back to the U.S. So punishing these supply chains with tariffs would actually antagonize the very firms Washington needs for its friendshoring initiatives.
You mean encouraging companies to move production to allied nations?
Yes. So it makes the tariff threat far less straightforward and potentially, well, self-defeating than it first appears.
That's a fascinating point. So it's not just about India's direct exports, but American companies operating within India, creating this complex, almost interwoven economic fabric.
Exactly. It complicates things significantly.
Okay. What about the energy security angle you mentioned earlier? How much leverage does India truly wield there, given global dynamics?
Well, the energy security math profoundly favors Delhi. Consider this: replacing 35% of India's crude overnight. It wouldn't just be a monumental logistical challenge for India itself,
Right.
but it would also instantly spike Brent crude prices globally.
Which hits consumers everywhere.
And that, of course, would significantly hurt U.S. consumers through much higher gasoline prices, which, importantly, remains a top 5 issue in U.S. polling as we head into an election year.
Okay, so Indian officials must know this.
Oh, they're keenly aware. They therefore believe Trump might be bluffing or perhaps at least signaling room for a carefully staged drawdown of Russian oil purchases rather than an abrupt, economically damaging halt.
A high-stakes game, then.
Very much so. Both sides have a lot to lose.
Shifting gears slightly, we heard about an earlier poll showing incredibly strong Indian support for Trump, almost a testament to that earlier bromance sentiment. Has that shifted at all, given these new tensions?
Yes, that poll from the European Council on Foreign Relations back in January 2025. It did indeed find that a striking 84% of Indians thought Trump 2.0 is good for India, which was the highest approval among all 24 countries polled.
That's remarkable.
It is, but that survey predates the current terrorist shock. And crucially, it predates a significant incident in February, the U.S. military deportation flight.
The one that sent illegal Indian migrants back in handcuffs?
That's the one. This event was huge news in Hindi-language media for days, dominated headlines. An incident like that could easily flip public sentiment.
A crucial and often overlooked factor. The Economist article didn't really touch on that.
No, it doesn't delve into that kind of domestic fallout.
Interesting. So, beyond simply refusing to be lectured, does India have any tangible leverage of its own in this situation? Any cards Delhi can truly play in this negotiation?
Absolutely. Delhi still holds significant retaliation levers, and has been quietly threatening to use them.
Such as?
India can, and in some cases has, hinted at WTO-permitted mirror duties on things like U.S. almonds, Harley-Davidsons, LNG cargoes.
Hitting specific U.S. constituencies.
Precisely. These are strategically chosen products because they directly impact voters in politically competitive swing states in the U.S. That gives Delhi significant economic and political leverage.
And the Economist piece didn't cover this counterplay.
None of this strategic counterplay surfaces in their article, but it's a critical, often unspoken part of the dynamic. Adds another layer of complexity to the negotiation table.
Fascinating. Okay, and beyond these immediate trade spats, what about the broader strategic relationship between the U.S. and India? Is that equally brittle, or is there a more enduring foundation that withstands these transactional pressures?
No, I'd say the broader strategic cooperation is far more resilient and enduring than these current trade rows suggest.
Like what specifically?
Think about joint drone production, the Kuwait Maritime Domain Awareness feeds, or even a pending intelligence sharing pact focused on China's submarine movement.
These aren't minor collaborations.
Not at all. They're significant security initiatives. And crucially, they all survived the first-term tariff war and are still progressing through working-level channels.
So ongoing buffers.
Yes, ongoing buffers and deeper security ties that go largely unmentioned in the Economist's narrative. Yet they represent a significant underlying layer of collaboration that isn't easily disrupted by tariff disputes.
Right. It complicates any narrative of a complete unraveling.
Definitely.
This brings us to a really important point. What underlying assumptions might the Economist article be making that we, as informed observers, should actively challenge, particularly around the core reasons for this apparent unraveling?
Well, one major assumption to challenge is the framing that buying Russian oil unequivocally equals funding the war machine.
That seems too simple.
It's a simplification, yes. India is actually paying below-cap prices for this oil, and every discounted barrel purchased by India actually helps to erode Moscow's profit margin. Well, it prevents a tighter global market. A tighter market would, in fact, enrich Russia's premium customers elsewhere. Even the U.S. Treasury has privately acknowledged this price cap dividend.
The price cap dividend.
Essentially, the idea that by buying oil at a discount, India is helping to reduce Moscow's overall profits and prevent global prices from spiking for others. It paints a much more nuanced economic reality.
Than the stark black and white portrayal often presented.
Exactly.
Okay. And what about the idea that these tariffs could genuinely make major companies like Apple rethink their significant presence and investments in India? Is that a realistic threat Modi needs to worry about?
That's also worth scrutinizing. Consider Apple's U.S. models, for example. They already clear under existing pharma or electronics exemptions.
Ah, so they're carved out already.
In many cases, yes. And major manufacturers like Foxconn, they're continuing their significant capital expenditure in places like Tamil Nadu, making huge long-term investments.
Why stay if tariffs are rising?
Because alternative manufacturing sites, say Vietnam, also face substantial U.S. tariffs 19 to 20%, according to the USTR's country list. So it's the relative, not absolute tariff levels that matter most to these global companies.
It's about comparisons, not just the India number.
Precisely. This means India might still be comparatively attractive, even with new tariffs.
So when we pull all these threads together, what does this tell us about the broader narrative that Modi is potentially pivoting away from the U.S., maybe choosing other alliances or a more isolationist path? Is that really the case?
Look, the optics are certainly fiery. All the strong public rhetoric we've discussed, it makes headlines. But the substance, it's far more hedged and pragmatic than a complete pivot.
How so?
Delhi is actually buying more U.S. LNG and crude volumes literally doubled in July, even as it robustly defends its purchases of Russian barrels.
Hedging its bets, essentially.
Exactly. This behavior looks much more like a strategic diversification of energy sources and geopolitical maneuvering, maximizing India's advantage in a complex global landscape. It's not a definitive divorce or fundamental pivot away from the U.S.
More like balance, not abandonment.
That's a good way to put it.
Thinking ahead then, what are some likely trajectories or even risks that others might be missing in this incredibly complex and dynamic situation? Where might this go next?
Well, we could very well see a mini deal 2.0. Negotiators are due in Delhi on August 25th.
Right, that's coming up soon.
And it's entirely plausible that a swap could involve, say, a phased Russian oil glide path, maybe a 10% reduction per quarter.
In exchange for what?
In exchange for tariff caps at, for example, 30%. And those upcoming Moscow meetings we mentioned earlier.
Jay Shacker's trip.
Yes. They actually serve as leverage for India in these negotiations with the U.S. Not necessarily a sign that India is abandoning ties with America. It's all part of the diplomatic dance.
I see. And what about specific industries that might be affected or perhaps find relief from these pressures?
Sectoral carve-outs are very likely to expand beyond what we've seen. After pharmaceuticals and semiconductors,
Which already have some exemptions.
right, textiles look like the next industry likely to get exemptions. We're seeing U.S. brands actively lobbying Congress,
Arguing what?
arguing that tariffs will simply shift orders to Vietnam, not bring jobs, reshore them back to the U.S. This kind of industry-specific lobbying can often cut through the broader political rhetoric and create practical exceptions.
It truly sounds like a masterclass in strategic maneuvering on all sides. Are there any potential boomerang effects for Trump's policies that he might not be fully considering?
Oh yes, Trump's Russia clause could boomerang significantly beyond India.
How?
Consider Indonesia and Malaysia, for example. They also import discounted Urals, crude for their refineries.
So slapping tariffs only on India.
Exactly. It would look arbitrary, could easily invite WTO challenges, and would significantly erode the broader coalition against China narrative that the U.S. is actively trying to build in Asia.
It risks alienating other key partners.
Precisely. Partners who might otherwise align with Washington.
And finally, domestic politics. Always a pivotal role, right? How might these internal pressures influence the external dynamics we're discussing?
Absolutely critical. In the U.S., for instance, you have Midwest soybean and LNG exporters already actively pressuring the White House over potential tariffs.
As it hits their markets.
Directly impacts their crucial markets and, importantly, their voter bases. Meanwhile, in India, opposition parties are weaponizing incidents like the deportation flights.
To frame Modi how?
To frame Modi as subservient to Trump, which he certainly wants to avoid, especially as he cultivates an image of strong, independent leadership on the global stage.
So these internal pressures shape the public posture and negotiating positions.
Significantly, as another layer of complexity.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? When we connect this to the bigger picture, it seems The Economist is certainly correct that the honeymoon phase between Modi and Trump, or perhaps more accurately, between India and the U.S. on some fronts, is indeed over.
Right, the bromance narrative shift is real.
But they might be wrong to suggest a straight-line descent into complete estrangement.
I think so. What we're witnessing is perhaps best described as hardball transactionalism, not a strategic breakup. Both Modi and Trump are, well, strongman leaders, yet their core incentives ultimately diverge.
How so?
Trump needs those headline-grabbing tariff threats for his 2026 midterm narrative. Right. That tough deals image that appeals directly to his base. Modi, on the other hand, needs cheap oil for his rapidly growing economy and, crucially, the political space to portray India as a sovereign power that bows to no one, including China, for his own domestic audience.
So we should expect noisy brinkmanship,
Definitely.
selective carve-outs, and after maximalist posturing, probably another deal both sides can confidently spin as a victory.
That seems the most likely path.
In a world of overlapping crises and constantly shifting alliances, it sounds like the U.S.-India marriage of convenience is bruised, but as we've discussed, far from broken.
Well put. And this raises an important question for you to consider. In an increasingly multipolar world, how do these transactional relationships, driven so strongly by immediate domestic political needs, truly coexist with long-term strategic alliances? Does this type of brinkmanship ultimately strengthen or weaken global stability in the long run? Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us on The Economist in Your Ear. We hope this exploration has given you a more complete understanding of this complex global dynamic.